What is going on, y'all? Welcome back to week 6 edition of Addy's Action. If y'all are new here, welcome. This is a video I make every single week where I go over some of my favorite tournament plays on this week's DraftKings main slate, and a little bit I touch on FanDuel as well here and there. But essentially, we take more of a tournament approach when I'm making these videos, trying to look at players that I think are going to come in lower owned relative to my expectations of them. Um, but again, these aren't going to be total off the wall GPP plays. These plays are going to definitely have some sort of cash game playability because I want these plays to be relevant, not just random shot in the dark plays. So yeah, we're gonna get into it. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Thank you guys for tuning in again. As always, as you guys know, we run the same giveaway every single week on Locks DFS. Where all you got to do is leave a like, leave a comment, and you'll be entered into winning a free season pass of your choice. You can choose between NFL and NBA. Great products for both. Can't go wrong with either. And we announce the winner every Thursday night, every Wednesday, but it's for the Thursday Night Football Showdown video that comes out on Wednesday. So keep your eye out for that next week to see if you're the winner. But again, all you got to do is leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. But yeah, so with that being said, let's jump into a quick lineup review. I might start cutting these out of the video if you guys don't really want to see these. It's just to show you guys that I am playing the guys that I'm talking about. We mentioned these guys last week. Noah Fant, obviously, the worst player on the team, but not so much looking at him as far as what he can do for me, but what he can do for me salary wise. Just opened up a ton of salary for me to afford guys like Watson, Zeke, McCaffrey, Eckler, etc., etc. But yeah, good week overall. This is in 3-3-3 Wildcat. Cashed it. This is the 5th straight week cashing that 5 out of 5 weeks. Partially because I feel like this is a pretty soft tournament. Like for example, there's 1,000 positions paid, and I'm in 331st with 231. But in the $250 double up, I was like just barely squeaking in there. I was 17th out of 20. So it's definitely a soft tournament over here, but we also have a pretty good product over at locksdfs.com. So if you do want to check us out, locksdfs.com, we'll help you out. We post, lock sheets that have our condensed player pool, where we give them grades. We rank them based on cash game plays, value plays, GPP plays. We color coordinate it. It's a pretty good, it's one of like if I was a member, it'd definitely be one of the main things I would use in building my lineups, just because it breaks it down for you so simply. And then obviously you get access to us 24/7 in the members only Slack chat. So with that all being said, let's jump into this slate. Let me X out of this. All right, so we usually start these slates by talking about who I think are going to be the highest owned, or who's projecting as the highest owned quarterbacks. And this week, quarterback ownership is fairly spread out, but it's all condensed to the upper tier. Guys like Pat Mahomes is leading the way, or I should say Deshaun Watson's actually leading the way slightly. Then Pat Mahomes, then Lamar Jackson. Scrolling down a bit farther, we got Kyler Murray, then Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, Dak Prescott. All really good plays, but I'm going to go down a little bit farther. I should preface this by saying that I'm going to end up playing one of these high-priced quarterbacks. I don't see myself coming down here in this, sub 6K range for a QB. But with that being said, most people aren't going to do that as well. So that's going to leave a lot of these guys way under-owned, and a few of them are in pretty good spots. So with everyone looking to pay up at quarterback, it's a good week to be contrarian and pay down at the position, but I don't want to lead you guys the wrong way. I probably will be paying up for one of these guys. They're all in such smash spots. You can't really go wrong with either one of the top 4, Mahomes, Lamar, Watson, and Murray. Can't really go wrong with either one of them. But for the sake of this video, let's scroll down a little bit farther and go with Gardner Minshew. So kind of surprised not to see Gardner Minshew popping that much in ownership. I expect that to probably change a little bit come Sunday morning. I am recording this on Saturday night, and so far he's not projecting that highly owned, so maybe it won't change. A lot of people still view this New Orleans defense as a super tough matchup, and that they are, but more so at home. Both their dominant defensive performances this season have come at home. On the road, they've struggled a fair amount, and they're not a full pass funnel, but they're definitely leaning towards being a pass funnel. They do still have a pretty dominant run defense as they had last year. But although that hasn't even been as strong this year. And then defensively, they've just been, as far as the pass game, they've just been so. I mean, a big reason to like Gardner Minshew is that both his wide receivers have fairly good spots. Marshawn Lattimore started off this season not great. He's turned it around a little bit, starting with that Amari Cooper game where he blanked Amari Cooper, or not blanked him, but he essentially shut him down, took him out of the game, kind of turned his season around, and he's probably going to be tasked with guarding or with shadowing DJ Chark, who's just emerged as one of the best wide receivers in football this year. The guy's a beast, runs a 4.35 40. Has got a great catch radius, makes a bunch of difficult catches, and just doesn't drop balls. I'm a huge DJ Chark fan. I think his price is kind of outlandish on DraftKings, and he's still not going to be that highly owned, with a lot of people looking at his counterpart, D.D. Westbrook, who also has a good matchup. And again, these are reasons why we like Gardner Minshew in this spot. But D.D. Westbrook, he runs almost 90% of his routes out of the slot, and when teams target New Orleans in the slot, they they complete passes at a 73% clip for 410 yards and 3 touchdowns. They've allowed big games to multiple guys out of the slot. Tyler Lockett comes to mind. Chris Godwin comes to mind. Cooper Kupp comes to mind. So yeah, this is a good spot for both his top receiving options as well as his running back out of the backfield, Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette's actually projecting as a fairly chalky running back this week, and I definitely am on board with that play. I think he makes for a great mid-price play as far as just the amount of touches he's getting. But if he is going to come in as one of the top 3 owned running backs on this slate, then having a guy like Gardner Minshew and hoping that the touchdowns come through the air as opposed to the ground definitely give you a lot of leverage on those who do have Leonard Fournette. As far as Minshew's play, he's just been great. What more can you really say about this guy? He's got 6 touchdowns, no interceptions since he's taken over the starting role, and he hasn't had easy matchups at all. He's had Tennessee at home to Tennessee, who coming into that matchup were a fairly vaunted defense, and they still are. I mean, they still have a fairly good secondary. Then at Denver, which is never an easy place to play, and then at Carolina, who was just shutting down teams. They shut down Houston right before they played Jacksonville and gave up 27 points to Minshew and the DJ Chark show. So, love this spot for Minshew. I think he's just way too talented for 5K. He definitely has some rushing upside as well. As you can see, 6 carries in week 2, 7 carries in week 5. If he gets you anywhere from 30 to 50 yards on the ground, that's 3 to 5 points right there that, just sort of solidify his floor. So high floor, high ceiling upside in Gardner Minshew, and I think it makes a lot of sense if you are paying down at quarterback. With that being said, let's move on to running back. So let's go over the high price running backs. Like I mentioned, Leonard Fournette is up here. He's 3rd. Above him, we have Malcolm Brown, pending the Todd Gurley news. Or excuse me, I believe Todd Gurley's out. I'm mixing up Todd Gurley and the David Johnson news. Todd Gurley's out. So Malcolm Brown. Le'Veon Bell after that. Then we got Leonard Fournette. Scrolling down a little bit farther. Dalvin Cook, I'm not sure I necessarily buy Dalvin Cook coming in as a 4th on running back. But nevertheless, that's where he's projecting right now. And then you got the cheap guys like Adrian Peterson, Kenyon Drake, this kid out of Arizona, I'm forgetting his name, Chase Edmonds. If David Johnson sits, then we got Mark Ingram, Chris Carson, Nick Chubb. So we got those guys projecting as running backs. And what's insane is that I haven't yet read the highest priced running back on this slate, and that's Ezekiel Elliott. Love Ezekiel Elliott this week. It's one of those, like quintessential pay up to be contrarian types of spots, which are like my favorite spots in fantasy football. Anytime you can pay up and get a stud and still be contrarian with a great player in a great matchup, I'm going to do that all day. It's super hard to afford one of these high-priced running backs with a lot of the ownership, as far as the high-price ownership, looking pretty condensed to the wide receivers. Guys like Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins are generating a ton of ownership, as well as the high-priced quarterbacks. So a lot of people are coming to this mid-range or going cheap, like I mentioned, with guys like AP, Kenyon Drake, Malcolm Brown, Chase Edmonds. So that a lot of people aren't going to be able to afford these high-priced running backs. And then, as I mentioned, the highest price running or the highest owned running back on this slate right now is is Malcolm Brown, but right after that is Le'Veon Bell. So if you don't play Le'Veon Bell, especially if you don't play Le'Veon Bell, Ezekiel Elliott becomes all the more better of a tournament play because the ideal game script for Ezekiel Elliott would be sort of a throwback to Dallas of years past, where they just controlled the clock and run the ball with great success, control the clock, and then run the clock out. And if that does happen, we could see Le'Veon Bell come on the short side, and this Jets offense come on the short side of the time of possession battle. And so it makes for a great pivot off of a very chalky Le'Veon Bell. As far as the matchup goes, it's an awesome matchup as well. Dallas is currently projected for just about 26 fantasy points, just about 26 real points. I believe it came down from 26.25. Just a slight reverse line movement on the Jets, which I'm pretty sure is just indicative of the Sam Darnold, being cleared news. And, this line probably is a bit undervalued as far as the Jets side of it goes. But I think it correcting back to 7 makes sense. But it's still a great matchup. I mean, C.J. Mosley's still out for the Jets. Henry Anderson looks like he's going to miss this game as well. So that makes it way better for Ezekiel Elliott as far as those are their top 2 run defenders. And this Jets team has been fairly good defending the run, but Zeke is just dominating snaps. Tony Pollard's played like 5% of the snaps or something. Let me see. Combined over the past 2 games, or last 4 games, Tony Pollard's played about 5 to 7% of the snaps. So, yeah, just an awesome spot for Zeke Elliott. He's going to command a ton of touches. He's got probably some of the highest touchdown equity on the slate. He makes for an elite pivot off of a guy like Le'Veon Bell. Because if Ezekiel Elliott goes off, there's a high chance Le'Veon Bell does not see the field too much, although he could still have a big game as far as receiving upside goes for Le'Veon Bell, which I'm pretty sure is the reason why people are playing him for the most part. And then in addition to that, they're getting back Tyron Smith. He's more of a boon to their pass protection. So big for Dak as well, who's coming in way under-owned. But it's definitely going to help in the run game as well. And the Jets are giving up almost 28 touches per game to running back. So if you project Ezekiel Elliott from anywhere to 25 to 30 touches, I think he smashes. It makes for a great spot to pay up to be contrarian. So with that being said, let's move on to wide receiver, which is looking like it's looking interesting. It's because I think 6 of the top 10 highest owned players right now are wide receivers. Just starting from the top going down, we got DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham, Cooper Kupp, Julio Jones, who's probably my favorite of all of them, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Thielen, Thomas, Will Fuller, Tyler Lockett, Jarvis Landry, Calvin Ridley, Larry Fitzgerald. That's the guy I want to talk about, Larry Fitzgerald. I think the way Larry Fitzgerald is priced this week on DraftKings, on FanDuel, he's just like incredibly cheap. I don't really know what FanDuel's up to right now. He was 5,400 last week, and they upped him 200, and maybe the best possible matchup you could ask for. So he's kind of just like a lock and load over there. But on DraftKings, it feels like he's going to come in fairly under-owned. I just probably read 11 or 12 wide receivers that are going to come in higher owned than him. And his price is right in the middle of guys that are projecting fairly high. Like a guy like Michael Gallup, I read. Will Fuller, his name popped. Tyler Lockett. You go up a little bit. Odell Beckham Jr. at 6'8". And then the high-price guys, obviously, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, Cooper Kupp. All these guys are going to generate so much ownership that it feels like this mid-tier of wide receivers kind of going overlooked outside of Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham's a smash play. But Larry Fitzgerald's got an awesome matchup this week versus an Atlanta defense that's actually going to be missing Desmond Trufant as well. Trufant definitely plays more on the perimeter, so it won't affect him as much since Larry Fitzgerald runs 94% of his snaps out of the slot. But still noteworthy that they're going to be missing their best cornerback this week. So that, just ups, Kyler Murray, Christian Kirk. But this game, we know this game is going to be one of the fastest paced games on the slate. Arizona running at the fastest situation neutral pace of play. Atlanta's up there in the top 10 as well. And, Arizona just has a tendency of speeding up their opponents, which is definitely, a boost to the Atlanta side of the offense as well. But Larry Fitzgerald, didn't have a great week 5. He was on my team, obviously, but he still did generate 8 targets, led the team in air yards. And I think Christian Kirk coming back this week, who it looks like he's going to come back. He's a game-time decision. He was limited all week. I think him coming back is actually going to help Larry Fitzgerald. You just can't key in on one guy, which is definitely when you run as sort of a predictable offense as Cliff Kingsbury runs, just being able to key in on Larry Fitzgerald is definitely not ideal for him. So having another weapon available there will just sort of, take the attention off of him. Sort of like the same situation we've got with DeAndre Hopkins, all those ancillary wide receivers like Will Fuller, the tight ends, Duke Johnson, all these guys having good games are going to take attention away from a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. Sort of got the same situation here with Larry Fitzgerald, maybe a bit less so. But teams targeting the slot versus Atlanta, 31 of 41 passing, that's 76% for 306 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's still in top 5 in the league in targets with 44. These guys, Arizona are going to throw the ball close to 40 to 50 times a game, depending on the game script. If you project Larry Fitzgerald for, a reasonable target share of 25%, you're looking at double-digit targets and, high-value targets. They love going to him at the end zone with that little bubble screen play. You can basically chalk one of those up every single week. If they get to, the 2, 3, 4, 5 yard line, they're going to throw a quick screen to Larry Fitzgerald and just let him out physical his way into the end zone. So that's great. And I just love the fact that, his price is just sort of awkward. And anytime these guys are awkwardly priced, it's going to just lower their ownership naturally. So definitely interested in Larry Fitzgerald here on DraftKings and FanDuel. So let's move on to tight end. Tight end's an interesting position this week. Just really 4 guys that are projecting. Just really 4 guys that are projecting at all. The top 4 owned are looking like Austin Hooper, 3rd highest owned player on the slate. Obviously, he's got that funnel defense versus Arizona. It's just been the worst team defending tight ends over the past year, almost 2 years. But after that, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Gerald Everett. And yeah, that's really it. The next guy you see is way down here, Jeremy Sprinkle, who's filling in for Vernon Davis. So there's really just, 5 tight ends that are being talked about. So I'm just going to mention one of those 5, and that's going to be Mark Andrews. I think my favorite of these high-priced quarterbacks, as of right now, I'm still going to do some more research, but as of right now, and I've already done a ton, is looking like Lamar Jackson. I think if Hollywood Brown misses, it's going to be really interesting to see how this offense operates, because he's just such an integral part to this offense as far as just the ability to stretch the field. I want to see, I think at any tougher of a matchup, I'd be really interested in Lamar Jackson struggling here, but he's not got a tough matchup. He's got the Bengals, who might be the worst defense in the sport. But essentially, Lamar Jackson's got a 2-man target. He either targets Marquise Brown or Mark Andrews. So I think this is sort of like an NBA type situation where, as opposed to, it's just sort of like usage rate. You just look at it. I don't know how many of you are familiar with NBA. I take it a lot of you are. When a star player is missing from an offense or from a team, you just look at where that usage is spread out to. And I think here, as opposed to, projecting guys you could project a guy like, Miles Boykin and Willie Snead for a target or 2 more each. And I think that's generous. I think a guy like Mark Andrews, who's gotten at least 7 targets in every single game, is pretty much a lock to keep doing that. And I think this is easily a week, if Hollywood Brown were to miss this game, that Mark Andrews could get up to the double-digit 12, 13, pushing 13 targets, high-value targets, end-zone targets. That's a lot of expected fantasy points. And in this matchup, which is pretty much as good as it gets, teams targeting tight ends against the Bengals are 14-19 passing. That's 74%, 214 yards and a touchdown. This guy popped. He was the only tight end on Josh Hermsmeyer's buy low air yard model. He just got so much regression coming his way, and he's already putting up monster scores. He could still be a little banged up. Obviously, you see questionable by his name. I think that might lower his ownership a bit, just having the Q by his name all week. Obviously, with the foot and shoulder injury, I believe. But I'm just not too worried about it. I mean, he ran 30 pass routes last week. That was the second highest he's ran all season. He may be a little banged up, but he's going to be out there and he's going to be toughing through it. And this is just an awesome spot for him to rack up, 100-yard game, potentially a couple touchdowns here. Big fan of Mark Andrews here in this spot. So, with that being said, I think that'll wrap it up for Addy's Action this week. I appreciate all of you guys who tuned in. As always, it really does mean a lot. As you guys know, just to touch on it again, the giveaway, all you got to do is leave a like, leave a comment, and make sure you're subscribed, and we'll pick you. Hopefully, we'll pick you for a free season pass of your choice on Wednesday. So with all that being said, guys, thank you so much for checking out this video. Hope you did enjoy. I hope you guys run pure as hell this week 6 and take something down. So that all being said, I'll see you guys next week, week 7 for Addy's Action. Peace.